Mm.
One thing that I want to touch on with this is because I think that there are ways to kind of expedite a lot of the uptake of a lot of these skills. And, I've looked into a lot is how did Silicon Valley really become Silicon Valley? And, one of the things is that when the internet happened, many years ago, it was kind of this unique thing in this area, and it drew people from around the world to Silicon Valley. And one company was started, and then maybe employee number 3 from that company would leave and start another company, and then employee number 5 would leave and start another company. And that's really what grew it. And it was kind of this bringing together, learning, and then growing from there. And I think that when we look at some of the emerging markets, there is that potential to learn from others and to collaborate. And previously it wouldn't be possible because there wasn't, the ability to travel or to use the internet and to connect with people. But I think now there is. And so it's how can we not just, build it on our own, but how can we say, hey, there's an entrepreneur doing something similar, maybe in China or in the US. How can they connect with a local entrepreneur, not for them to take over, but to share their skills and enable them to, to learn the big data analytics or the machine learning, but then also implement it. So that way they can hire people and their company can grow. And I think that's how it'll really begin to build up the communities through these smaller companies. Because then, employee number 3 will leave and start their own. Employee 5 will leave. And another point on this that I just want to point out while I'm on the topic, because I really believe in this, is that, it's important in Nigeria or in Africa not to try to recreate Silicon Valley or Europe or China, but find what is really unique and special locally, because the rest of the world wants that and they want to see that. But it really has to be finding what's unique and doubling down on that. Yeah, one thing I watched this bit from this entrepreneur in Nigeria yesterday, and she was saying that, building up her business, first off, she is, kind of represents, a good part of the population in Nigeria. And she was saying that, yes, she did go and get funding. It was a tough process, but she did. But a lot of the funding, and I'm kind of bringing it back to our broadband conversation, most of the funding went just to paying for the internet and being able to keep the 20 employees online. It was like $1,000 a month or something, which is a lot of money. And so I think, yes, it is important to make sure that there's funding for entrepreneurs, but I think also ensuring that they're able to use the funding for really what they need it for and what everyone wants them to use it for, which is hiring more people, growing their business, teaching and learning these new skills. But when most of the money has to go to broadband, it's not going quite as far as I think it could be. I say really, I'm not too familiar with the taxation system and whatnot, but one thing I do think is important is that with innovation and digitalization, it's creating transparency. And I think it's a transparency that never has been able, no one's ever been able to have before. But I think, not only is that going to really, first off, it will create more money, it will create equality. And if there's one thing I've learned in my whole life is the importance of things being fair. And when things are feel fair, people are then able to kind of pursue their passions or really dive into what they want to do. And I think that being digital will create that transparency to enable, everyone to kind of have that feeling and the ability to contribute. One more thing I want to mention really fast is, and I don't want to kind of, make it sound simpler than it is, because I know it's a very complex issue. But, when you look at like a Facebook or a Google, these really are just tools to enable local businesses to sell more, to grow their business. And so, in my view, it's just to continue kind of taxing the local and looking at these as now they have these amazing tools to be able to sell to someone in another town or to be able to kind of grow that business locally. So I think that hopefully that's kind of the main goal, is to use it as tools. I love this topic because I think it's a great topic because, right now in the US or in Europe, there's so many laws, like I can't get my health record from one place to the other. It's really complex. But in Africa, you don't have a lot of that. So you can start fresh, which is exciting because you have the new technologies that will enable a decentralized system and enable people to actually own their own data and utilize it for their own good, as well as just make life easier. And so I know there are those technologies. I think it's making sure, coming back to this broadband discussion, that making sure that the pieces are in place to enable those technologies to be built, because it is an exciting opportunity, to be honest. So kind of touching on the COVID situation, to be honest, first off, I was actually supposed to visit Nigeria, as well as a couple other places in March, and I had to cancel the trip because of the whole COVID situation. And obviously I was very disappointed. But what the COVID situation has done is it's actually forced everyone to learn how to use Zoom. And, a lot of meetings that previously I wasn't able to get because people would say, okay, we'll have them when you meet in person, or when you come here, we can do that. Suddenly it was like, okay, well, you can't come here. So, let's move forward how we are without expecting, having these expectations. Let's do what we have with what we have. And so for me, it was actually fantastic because I think it really pushed a lot forward, and it really forced people to learn Zoom. And, to be honest, a lot of people I even know, they would just print out their emails or, didn't use computers as much as they should because they didn't really understand it. And so I think it's a great example of how it is difficult to force people to do anything, obviously. It has to be driven by that demand side. It has to be that need. And I think it starts from, the corporates seeing that need, and then also seeing the opportunity that they have, that by doing things a little bit differently, they'll be able to actually grow their business or make money. But you've got to try. And, there's the classic innovator's dilemma. If anyone, I suggest reading that book or kind of taking a look at maybe an article that talks about the innovator's dilemma in terms of, yes, maybe a company's doing well and innovating is going to maybe take it down a little bit, but it's the only way to get to the next level. So I think that transfer of skills that Ifeanyi was talking about is something that it has to be driven by each individual with that want to learn. And I know that want is there. So it's just providing that opportunity, that access, whether it be through collaboration or, physical innovation hubs, accelerators. It could come in many different ways. Yeah. And it's funny because I read all the reports online, and every government agency seems to have put out some great press release about the innovation or things, their plan of what to do. And, it's funny because down in, I think it was like South Africa, I reached out because I was like, oh, I see that you launched this big initiative. And she's like, well, we announced it, but, we still have to actually, do it. So I think there is that big gap around the world. It really is around the world in terms of, you know what you want to do, but you have to know why you want to do it and then how you want to do it. And those are the missing pieces, I think it was Simon Sinek, his famous speech where, you talk about the why, the what, and the why, the how, the what. And it seems like everyone has the what, because you can see it around the world. The what's what is the cool piece, but it's the why and the how. And if you don't have the why, you're going to struggle with the how. And so I think those are the pieces that requires an ecosystem. It requires the openness to learn and trying something new or different. I think that many people, right now the world got to the place we are through silos or through different ways. But to take it to the next level, you've got to break those down, and you really have to say, okay, We understand we can't do it all ourselves. How can we actually collaborate? How can we, maybe something may not have the tangible effect, but it's going to have that ripple effect. And that ripple effect is actually the how, to get to what we want.